back to Miss Cindy's Kitchen. And in my previous episodes, I have mentioned fixing beans. So I wanted to show you today how to prepare your beans for cooking. So make sure you like and subscribe and give us your feedback. And I'm going to show you how to clean your beans and then soak them. And then in the morning, we'll get them on to cook in the crock pot. So I always use 2 pounds of beans. These happen to be 1 pounders, so I'm going to use 2. You put them in a colander.
Now, why do you clean your beans?
Because they're dried outside, so there can be rocks, there can be dirt, and there can be beans that aren't suitable for cooking, that are spoiled or wrinkly. So I usually just scoop and turn. Look for any stones or any blemished beans. And you will occasionally find rocks or stones or clumps of dirt in here. So that's why you've got to sort through them and rinse them. And that's true with any kind of bean, even lentils and split peas. So, and I usually I haven't found anything yet. But just flip them like this, and just flip them around and look for any beans that are misshapen or miscolored. And then, or they just look odd. Occasionally you'll find a bean of a different variety that's snuck in, but that doesn't really matter. So once you've established that there's no foreign bodies in your beans, you're going to just give them a quick rinse. Just rinse them and stir them around so they can all get rinsed off. Because they sometimes get dusty in the preparation process. I mean I should say in the drying process prior to their packaging. So then I just take them and I dump them in the crock pot craft. And then I find it much easier to use a pitcher to transfer water. Because that way you don't have to move your crock in and out of the sink to get water. And it usually takes filling this twice over. So this is a 2-quart pitcher, so about a gallon of water. I'll just put that in and soak the beans overnight. And then in the morning, I'll show you how I prepare them for cooking. So, and soaking the beans, it takes away the enzyme that makes them especially hard to digest and a little less gassy when you eat them. So
I didn't know that you would soak beans in order for them to digest better.
Yeah, it tends to break down the outermost part of the bean.
And how long do you soak them?
Overnight.
Overnight.
Yep. At least 8 hours overnight. A little less is okay, but. And you can just use neutral temperature water. Doesn't need to be hot or cold. So you want to have the water at least, a handful deep from the beans. So that way, this is a 8-quart crock pot, I believe. So when I'm cooking 2 pounds of beans, you want to have enough room for them to swell a little bit. They don't swell too much when you're soaking them, but that's pretty much it. So I will cover this and let them soak overnight. And in the morning, I will rinse them and then put them on to cook. And I will show you all the yummy ingredients I've used for a pot of beans. So we'll see you in the morning and get these beans on to cook. Welcome to Miss Cindy's Kitchen. Thank you for joining us as we show you how to prepare a pot of beans for the crock pot. And we have let them soak overnight, and then I drained them, rinsed them, and then refilled the crock pot carafe with water. So
and so you let them sit overnight, you drain the beans, and then you just, all right, so, and you put fresh water in there.
Right.
All right, cool deal.
Okay, and then you want to add some kind of meat to the beans to season them. Either a ham bone from, your Christmas ham, or any kind of ham bone you have, or even a piece of pork or a tiny pork roast. I've done it many different ways. We happen to have some really nice Applewood smoked bacon.
Bacon.
So I saved a couple pieces to season the beans.
It's a pretty thick bacon you got there.
Yep. It was probably a pretty thick pig too. Anyway, so make sure you like and subscribe and give us your feedback, because we love hearing from you. And one of the most important ingredients you're going to have in your kitchen is dry chicken broth. You can use it to flavor a lot of things. I've even used it to season refried beans that were canned refried beans that tasted kind of bland. So it's a very versatile ingredient to keep on hand. So I usually use 1 heaping tablespoon in the beans.
You use the dry broth.
The dry broth.
Would you be able to use the liquid broth?
You could use the liquid broth, but if you're already putting water in it, you don't need to dilute it that much.
Okay.
So, and then a tablespoon of this Montreal steak seasoning.
Ooh.
It's really good for seasoning beans. I'm just going to add a tiny bit more to make it a full tablespoon. And that gives a lot of flavor because it cooks into the beans. And then some fresh garlic. I buy the minced garlic that's already minced. It's a lot easier and it stays fresh longer in the fridge.
Just for clarification, I am not the one that closed the lid on that, because I get accused of closing the lids on.
I can always tell when you've used the jam because the lid is screwed on. It can survive an apocalypse. All right.
I'm not the one that screwed that lid back on, so.
Anyway, so we've got a tablespoon of minced garlic, and then I give a good shake of garlic salt. And there's already salt in the chicken broth powder and the Montreal steak seasoning, so you don't need to go overboard with the salt. It's just a little extra flavor, plus it has parsley in it. And then onion powder, I would say at least a teaspoon. I usually don't measure as I'm making this because I've been making it so often. And basically I have made it so often that I've kind of adjusted the recipe for my family's taste. And I found that certain combinations make a really good pot of beans. So that's pretty much the secret, is dry chicken broth, Montreal steak seasoning, garlic salt, fresh garlic, and onion powder.
And a little bit of meat.
And then some meat to season it.
So what kind of beans are you, because I know there are different kinds of beans, so what beans are you cooking up?
These happen to be Great Northern beans. They're sometimes called white beans. But any dry beans you have on hand, it's pretty universal. The only thing I've discovered is that lentils and split peas do not need soaking overnight. Only the regular beans need soaking overnight. So now that we've got this all assembled, it's going to cook in the crock pot for 8 hours on low or 4 hours on high. So, put that in the crock pot craft, close the lid, and most importantly, plug it in. That's one of the benefits of a digital crock pot. It's very obvious when it's plugged in because the screen is lit up. So I'm going to set it to high, and I'm going to put 4 hours on the timer. And that's it. And it's going to sit and cook for quite a while. And then when it comes time to get it ready, I will show you how to make some homemade cornbread to go with your soup beans. All right. Thank you for joining us on Miss Cindy's Kitchen. Today I'm going to show you how to make good old-fashioned cornbread to go with our beans. And one of the ways you can cook it is to cook it in a cast iron pan. And this is my grandmother's cast iron pan. It's really old, from the 30s. And basically you have your oven set at 450 and you're going to melt the shortening in the pan, in the oven, for 5 minutes, which is the time it'll take to assemble the rest of the cornbread. So let me put this in the oven. Alright.
And you just use that little bit of shortening?
Yeah, just a teaspoon of shortening. So that helps make a crisp crust on the cornbread. So for our dry ingredients, we have 1.5 cups of cornmeal. And I got this recipe off a Martha White cornmeal package. And what I did is I took the label off the cornmeal and the ingredient and the recipe on, put it on a jar to keep my cornmeal in. Because cornmeal, along with other grains, needs to be kept tight and dry to avoid spoilage and also insect activity. And one tip that a friend gave me was whenever you bring new grains into your house, such as flour, cornmeal, rice, etc., is to put them in the freezer overnight. That helps kill any larvae that may have picked up in transit to your house. Ooh. So anyway, a little side tip there. So 1.5 cups of cornmeal, and we're going to mix all the dry in this bowl. 1 cup of all-purpose flour, and 1/4 cup sugar, plain old white sugar, and then we have 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and 3/4 teaspoon salt, and that is our dry ingredients. So let's whisk that together. Get it all mixed up. And then for our wet ingredients, I'm going to mix them in this. We have 1 cup of milk, 1/4 cup of vegetable oil, and we have 2 eggs. I'm going to crack it into the same pitcher that held the milk. Save dishes. Alright, now shells. Alright, and give these a stir. Anytime I add eggs to a recipe that I'm mixing by hand, I prefer to mix them together before I put them in the rest of the ingredients. And you're going to mix all the wet ingredients together, and then you're going to put the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients. So, and for that I have this cake batter tool. It's really good for batters and brownies and such. So just stir it up.
So you do 1 bowl of the dry and 1 bowl of the wet, and you just mix the 2 of them together.
Yep. So just mix until combined. You don't want to over mix because it can make a batter tough. So let me clear up the counter, and I will bring the hot pan over here so you can see me add the cornmeal batter to the pan. So let me get that out of the oven. Put on my handy dandy oven mitts. Alright, and we're going to bring this over here so you can see me add the batter. Stir the hot oil around. And then going to pour the batter in. Kind of smooth it around. Alright. So just be mindful that this is exceedingly hot. So again, this is 450 degrees and it says 20 to 25 minutes. So that's gonna bake at 450 for 20 minutes, and then we'll be right back with you. We are back with our freshly baked cornbread. As you can tell, it's got a nice rise on it and a nice crust. See, doesn't that sound yummy?
Does sound yummy.
And our beans are done. I'll scoop them up and you can take a look. Some nice soup beans and some broth. And what's nice is you can dunk your cornbread in them. And I'm gonna get some toppings ready.
So what do you use for toppings?
Use cheese, sometimes chopped onion, salsa, sour cream. Just got this little bit of cheese left over, so I'm just gonna grate it up.
Go ahead, Tyler.
Here, Tyler, you can have the nub of the cheese. There you go. Alright. So we got some cheese. And then I usually cut the cornbread using, I have a serrated pie server that makes a good knife for round foods.
So what if you don't have a
just use a knife.
Skillet?
Well, with this, you could use an 8-inch or a 9-inch square pan, or even a round pan, and just grease it with some Crisco before you put the cornbread in it. And you wouldn't do the pre-cook thing. So, let's see, I didn't cut through that all the way. All right, here is the inaugural cornbread slice.
Nice.
Nice.
Look at all that steam coming off that.
So there's that. And you can top it with cheese and with salsa, sour cream, whatever you want. So a spoon to eat it with, and then a spoon for the condiments. So some salsa and some sour cream, and some people like hot sauce in their beans. It's whatever you prefer. And just remember that this cast iron pot is very, very hot. So if you need to move it, use a pot holder. You don't want to scorch yourself. But anyway, this is a nice down home southern dinner. You know, soup, beans, and cornbread, California style. So basically, you just prep the beans the night before, and then I often do this on a work day where I want to have a quick meal when I come home. I'll just get the beans sorted, rinsed, and soaked before I go to bed. Get up in the morning, rinse them off, put them in the crock pot with fresh water, seasonings. It'll cook all day while I'm at work, and when I come home, it's all good to go. So, anyway, thank you again for watching my channel, and please like and subscribe, and give me your feedback, and we look forward to seeing you again soon on Miss Cindy's Kitchen. Have a nice evening.
Thank you for watching Miss Cindy's Kitchen. To get more recipes like this one, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications when new videos are uploaded. Share it out to your friends, family, neighbors, and leave us a comment to let us know how this recipe worked for you. And don't forget to hit that like button. Again, thank you for watching Miss Cindy's Kitchen.